One of the questions we've been asking ourselves as directors at the moment, everything is tumbling along, but you want new challenges. If you look at how things were done, let's say 5, 10 years ago, it was to grow client relationships. You would take people out for lunch, you would interact, you would do this kind of social coffee catch ups, things like that. That kind of approach has completely shifted with the new Gen Z coming through. You tend to find that social interaction is probably not as dominant. It comes down to how you're communicating, how you're delivering, and how you're making that person.
Welcome to Long-Term Thinking for Business Success, a show for and by business owners. Each episode will explore how to beat the odds and create a sustainable business and the life we've dreamt of. Today's guest is Daria Horison, one of the directors of Scientific Fire Services, SFS. Scientific Fire Services' core business and expertise is focused on excellence and cutting-edge innovation in fire safety and risk engineering. Their approach begins by recognizing that every building and infrastructure project is unique and that each occupancy classification can present a variety of function requirements for a comprehensive, holistic solution. SFS strives to implement and customize each fire safety risk engineering design solution to address and incorporate the specific objectives of every project. Over the years, Daria has contributed to and developed innovative and successful performance-based fire engineering solutions through his highly collaborative approach on projects ranging from high-rise mixed-use residential developments to large industrial warehouse facilities, shopping centres, office buildings, educational facilities, clubs, and many more. 14 years ago, Daria moved to Sydney from Melbourne to open the Sydney office, where he now leads a team of 9 people and more recently became a director of SFS. Hi, Daria. Welcome to the Long-Term Thinking for Business Success podcast, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's quite exciting to be here.
To start things off and to explain a little bit about SFS, what's the change Scientific Fire Services wants to make? Or to put that another way, what's the vision you're trying to deliver, and who are your typical clients?
We are a fire engineering consultancy firm, and what we look at doing is assisting various different companies and services from architecture through developers to different fire services. And what we look at doing is help create and align with somebody's vision and to give the flexibility and understanding of a design to think outside the box because the building code is quite prescriptive. Further to that, there's a degree of cost saving and cost benefit analysis that we undertake to assist with that while making sure that we've got effective life safety still maintained for buildings.
And the clients that you work with, are they typically at the planning architectural phase of projects, or you then work with the developers and the builders? Where does your services typically start and end?
The great thing about fire engineering is we are designers at the end of the day. We're not like a typical fire services contractor or fire services engineer where we design sprinkler systems once a building's designed. Our involvement can start through a DA phase. So somebody comes up with an initial sketch or a concept from an architect and they'll look at engaging us, or we'll be engaged through a developer for construction phase. We can slot into any part of a design, whether it's from a schematic concept through to a fire order where it's an existing building and there's defects that have been involved, and we try and look at helping existing conditions and looking at it from a holistic point of view.
Given the breadth of projects you've worked on, is there a favorite project that you love talking about?
My main area over the years has been in large residential developments. The biggest one I worked on was Mascot Central, which was Meriton's project, which are 1,000 units. It was one of the first quite large single sites that we've done at that size and scale. It was separated into 4 quadrants and 4 building teams working on each quadrant. That was quite exciting and challenging in the sense that there was a lot of moving pieces. The staging of the site was that one building was being built, another ones were being handed over. So you've got all these different pieces where you have to allow for interaction of construction site and finished elements. In saying that, my favorite and most complicated site I worked on was a commercial building in Darlinghurst. It was an existing Masonic church. The client had a vision to develop a 3-story commercial building with sandstone, timber, everything like that, and converted that into an office commercial space. In the central part of that building was actually an organ, which was a well-known era where it had a chamber and everything, which is timber. We had to integrate all the systems, all the design, where you've got lather plaster ceilings, timber elements, and integrate existing heritage elements with current day design, which was challenging because obviously you can't comply with today's standards where the fire separation is timber or other plaster. And you want to make sure that you've got the visual kind of niceties to it as well. The end product is the Paul Ramsey Foundation site in Darlinghurst. Now, it was just a lot of elements that you didn't know how they worked, and then had to deal with the team to get to it.
Was there a key lesson or insight that you took away from those projects that has helped you on future projects?
Flexibility and thinking outside the box. It is very important to not look at cookie cutter solutions. How foraging works is also you have to consult with various stakeholders, including the fire authorities and different designers, to get the client's vision into a point where it's something that's feasible and tangible is quite challenging sometimes, especially with the one in Darlinghurst. You've got existing structural elements where it can't comply. And to get that past fire brigades, guidelines, internal policies, to get that through them was probably one of the harder things. As long as you present the information in a systematic way and give as much information you can get through that process. Outside of that, it's just managing people. There's so many moving pieces and so many people. You've got to get everyone on the line.
I would imagine your role, especially compared to civil engineering, you've got many more stakeholders that you need to deal with, the authorities, the designers, developers, the owners, etc. Is that the correct assumption?
Key stakeholders that we intertwine with and we have to work hand in hand with, more so being the principal certifying authority or your certifier for the building, who gives you a construction certificate as well as gives you a final occupation. But you've got to create relationships with them to make sure that you're not butting heads and you're both on the same page to get the end product approved for the client. Then also we have to make sure that there's services guys who have obviously design parameters they want to introduce to the project, and making sure that aligns with what you believe as a holistic fire risk or fire approach is plausible. When you think of construction, the reality is it is a financial position as well. So as long as you're not creating a design that's going to blow the budget, they bring that back to the fact that you've still got a suitable level of safety and everyone's on board.
As a business leader, I find we often forget to celebrate our achievements and wins. Thinking about your success at Scientific Fire Services, what are you most proud of and why?
That's a great question. The biggest thing I'm proud of is that I've gotten to where I am today by sticking to my laurels and pushing through and developing step by step. At the end of the day, I came to Sydney with zero client, zero network. There was another associate who was here at the time, was number 2. Within a year, he moved back to Melbourne. I was in Sydney by myself. What I was able to recognize was through completion of project and being client facing, that at the end of the day, there was certain parameters or certain deliverables that each client expected to see. That would relate to communication. If you've got great communication, they're really happy to understand where you're sitting. So if deliverables are falling behind, you communicate that. If you're ahead, that's even better. Understanding what the timeframes are for a project, because you're only a cog in the machine at the end of the day. You see the Gantt charts where they've got all the different deliverable dates, different things. Fire engineering is just one line, and you've got all the other services, making sure you know where you sit with those timelines and creating a good product. I think SFS has consistently strived to improve on the previous document or report that we prepared. Over the last 10 years, the quality of the documentation that we provide has surpassed what we did previously, and it's consistently growing and improving. I still remember there was a client who told me you're only as good as your last report and what type of service you provide. As long as you can keep that and you don't deviate from that, moving forward and growing a network is achievable. It is a hard slog, don't get me wrong. I think it's about probably 3-4 years for myself personally where I started to have very consistent clients who were giving us return work. And since then, we haven't really chased for work and haven't needed to, which is a great position to be in at the company. And for myself personally, as a professional, as a director of this company,
it takes a level of courage to move to a new city without, as you said, without any relationships, any clients, open a new office and hang your sign out. As I said in the introduction, you moved to Sydney 14 years ago. You opened the office. At that point, you had one other senior person. Before we dive into sort of the experience of the Sydney office, what was going on in the Melbourne business? Give us a sense of where the business was and why 14 years ago you made a commitment to open a new office.
My co-directors, Marmot Russell, were originally part of CSIRO, who was one of the forefront engineering firms. Obviously, it's a government-based company. In 2004, created Scientific Fire Services as a private entity. The relationships built were always New South Wales-based clients. At that stage, they would fly up to Sydney, come back, do that. It was sufficient enough to be based in Melbourne and service the clients in New South Wales. And we came to the point where we recognized that we needed a presence here in Sydney if we wanted to keep on getting projects, or if we wanted to get on the bigger projects or the more interesting ones. In the later part of 2010, the other directors put forward to myself and another engineer at the time, would we be interested? My thinking was, what did I have to lose? I was 27 years old. I enjoyed working as an engineer. I wasn't client facing at that stage. And I was like, what could be the worst thing that happens? At the end of the day, that's the key thing. It was originally meant to be a 3-year gig, 3 to 5 year gig. If it's a shit gig, although realistically, that's how you look at it. I said, all right, let's give it a go. In April 2011, I moved up here and we started doing what we do, writing reports, meeting other people. I started getting more opportunities to be client facing, talk to people, go networking with the industry, because the construction industry is quite large. Also met other consultants or certified building code consultants, and tried to align myself with people who are my age, people who are in a very similar position to me. You always want to align yourself with the directors, the top guys. My method of thinking was, I don't have a rapport. I don't have the history to say that I'm here with you guys. Not that I couldn't be. I took the position of saying, hypothetically, if I look at it from my point of view, over the next 5-6 years, if I align with somebody who I recognize as somebody I could get along with personable, also somebody who had a knowledge base that I could rely on, and vice versa, I decided I would align with those people and see if I could grow with them and see where they ended up. That was another networking kind of tool I used just on my own.
First of all, to go back to part of your answer, what's the risk of moving up? I love that attitude. When you look at the downside, there really is a significant downside. The concept of a decision that is a one-way door or a two-way door. If it's a two-way, you can walk through it without any problem. If it doesn't work, you can walk back out of it. Second, and I expect it's going to be a theme that's going to come through a few times, of how you've strategically built a relationship. I love that idea of not necessarily connecting with the senior managers in the potential clients, but with the people at your level that you can connect with on a more emotional level, because you could hang out together, you could go for a beer, listen to music, and build a long-term friendship. I expect, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, that a lot of your key clients today are the people that were at mid-level that you met 8-9 years ago when you moved up.
A lot of them are, and a lot of them are people that I connected with, and using their own networks referred me or said, I worked with him on this project. He was able to help us out. He thinks differently to a lot of people. He's very open-minded. I look at things and say, your first answer shouldn't always be no. We can't do that. What's the issue? What is the problem we have, and can we fix it? Can I help with that problem? And if I can't, at the end of the day, it's taken me a little bit longer than most to realize that if it doesn't work, it's okay. It doesn't work. You don't have to get every project through the hoop perfect. You've got to understand that sometimes it doesn't. Once you understand that, you can look at things without the emotional attachments. Early on in my career, I was quite emotional when I didn't win a project, or I felt like I did well and I didn't get the next one, or I thought I was a shoo-in for another project. I took it personally. Over the years, I've realized nothing is about you as a person. I think there's so many other variables and so many other elements that result in the end product, that you might be that person, you might not be, but don't take it personally, because there'll be another opportunity if they like you.
A great attitude. That takes a level of maturity to be able to separate emotions through a pragmatic perspective of the project. Was there an event that really triggered that, or was there a mentor that you worked with that helped you appreciate that?
Not being a director when I first moved up to Sydney, the rest of the directors were always very supportive. This is probably one of the best things I love about my company, and why I'm probably being loyal. I've been with the company for 18 years. They always were very supportive and happy to give me opportunities that I wasn't aware would be there.
We're just talking about where the maturity to be able to remove your emotions from a deal or a project or a commercial agreement with somebody. Removing that emotion takes an insight into behavior. I was wondering where that came from.
I was always emotionally invested in it because I was eager. I sometimes can't differentiate between being eager for a job and aligning with excitement, with the emotions that come when you want to win it. And there's a big carrot in front of you, you're very close to grabbing it. I generally have very good EQ with people. If I take a step back, I can watch an environment and work out where people sit in that arrangement. The company hired a mentor for me, opened my eyes to a lot of things, and allowed me to view things from a different perspective. He showed me the ropes in certain elements. The key thing he always said was, when you go to a project meeting, look at yourself from an above position where you're puppeteering the person who's sitting in that seat. The minute you can do that, you can observe what's going on in the room. In addition to that, you're not emotionally invested anymore because it's not you, it's the puppet interacting with the people. Not saying you're disengaged, but it's that element of being separated from the situation through that understanding of the emotions slowly subsided. And I didn't start taking things personal. The key thing is it's not personal. And also what you do is you review. Another family friend of mine who told me, once you finish the meeting, do a 10, 15-second recap of what happened. And was there certain things you would have responded to differently, or if you would have done something differently? And through that, you get the confidence and the understanding of how to navigate a meeting. Sometimes it's okay to be quiet, sit and listen to what's going on. You don't have to get involved. When it involves you, interact with it. When it doesn't, sit quiet and enjoy the ride. That's a few key experiences that I have.
They're insights that I imagine you've carried with you through your whole career and still appeal today. One final sort of question on the starting of the Sydney office. And you mentioned you had some clients through the original incarnation of the business with CSIRO. Did that give you a client base and work to do in Sydney, or was that work sent down to Melbourne and you had to really find your clients to start the Sydney office? Associated with that, did you have a team with you to do the work, or were you and the one other senior member here out there winning work and doing the work together? What was the first 6 to 18, 24 months of the business like from a sales, business development and operations perspective?
The way that our company is structured is there's the two offices are geographically independent, but we work as one unit at the end of the day. There was always the support from Melbourne. So Melbourne and Sydney weren't different offices. It was just geographical locations. Utilizing the directors' relationships, we had clients that we were getting work off. The quantum of work that we were getting was reduced in the fact that we didn't have a presence here. Our involvement to build a Sydney office and get more work was purely being based here. A byproduct of that was you can get work, and then it gets to a point where they look at you and go, how many people in your office? And you go, oh, one. So you start to go, we maybe have to start looking at 2, 3, 4. Utilizing that kind of strategy, we grew our company. We utilized each of the initiatives and networks. As those grew, you get a picture of it. As a business, you look at where are we tracking, how were we last year, how were we this year? And then is there too much work on, and do we have the right numbers? It's pretty much a balancing act. You're never going to get it right, but you can be close. So that's how we did it over that period.
I imagine your role and priorities in terms of your position have changed over the years as you've developed the Sydney office. Can you share today what your top priorities are and how you remain focused on them?
My top priorities are to keep on bringing in the work and maintaining relationships with key clients. My key focuses at the moment are to continue maintaining those clients, but building new ones, utilizing those current clients to extend and reach out to other people and say, look, this is what we do. Are you guys interested? In addition to that, it's training my team to have an appreciation of how it all works. If you don't understand the whole process, it's very hard to grow in this environment. We look at getting them exposed to more, grow them from grassroots up, and just getting them exposed to things from report writing, different projects, and becoming well-rounded engineers. People management, that's one of the hardest things I'm still learning today and probably won't ever stop learning. There's so many different personalities, emotions, things that you're aware of, some things you're not, because we're an office environment. You spend a large chunk of your life with people in the office, but there's obviously outside of office as well, and people, personal things, learning that element to make sure that everyone's happy and the culture fits. We were a family run business. That's what grassroots was. And we still like to keep that vibe. At the end of the day, yes, you've got titles and everything in the office, but there shouldn't be any reason why anyone in the office can't talk to another person, because we're all humans. That was probably one of the key things I've learned being in this company. Just talk it through, communicate. Like, nobody's better than somebody else because of the title or been there for longer. But you got to appreciate that some people have more experience. So when they're giving you knowledge or giving you supporting document, giving you that advice, I think it's really important just to sometimes listen as well.
The best ideas don't have to come from the top people in the business. People will see different things in different situations. If you can, as you have, build a communication framework that allows every idea to be considered, then you end up with a much better solution. Just going a little bit deeper on that, your role has obviously changed quite considerably from when you were the number 2 in an office of 2 to the number 1 in an office of 8 or 9 people now. How have you built the team around you to support not just your personal growth, but also the growth of the business? How have you considered the role of the people that are literally around you day to day, not the Melbourne office, but in the Sydney office, to help you grow yourself and the business?
COVID's a very good starting point. With COVID, we got to a point where everything was autonomous. You don't go to the meetings, everyone's just working through. The structure of the company was I would building the network I had, I would get all the fee requests, all the things, and I would manage it. And then I would try to delve out the projects. I have a tendency of holding on to things a bit too long. It got to a point where a lot of projects are coming in, and because of my time management, I tended to focus on still doing the reports at that stage. And through that, we as a collective with the other directors recognize that as an individual who brings in the work and then does the work at the same time, there's going to be periods where you're going to miss opportunities. And it was starting to happen. I was leaving proposals quite late. Then once we got the approval, I'd be sitting on it for 2-3 weeks. Somebody else never got that opportunity to do the 3 weeks that was sitting in my inbox. So what we came to realize was as a company, if you don't have a structure in place, that works when you've got enough people where you can manage it. As a company grows, it's too hard. You can't do it. There's too many mistakes that can happen where you don't want to miss out on these key projects you would love to work on. Talking with the other directors, we did a whiteboard exercise over the weekend and created a new structure where we created new engineering managers for 4 of the guys who we recognized had key skill sets. We had guys in Melbourne and guys in Sydney, and we created a new management team, which was 2 in Sydney, 2 in Melbourne. We know it wasn't going to be overnight success. Utilizing that, we were able to get the jobs allocated to this engineering managers team. From there, they started to manage the resources. It helped a lot for our company because it gave us a lot more relief and freedom to focus on other things, the work. That was probably the biggest change that we recognized that we had to do. This is the 3rd year now, and it's been one of the best things we've done.
First of all, congratulations. It's another level of maturity and insight in your own business and team to implement that structure. The 4 managers, the 2 in each city, were the people chosen because of their personality rather than their skills, or are they functional aligned? Let me give you some context. Typically, you would organize an operational part of the business into service lines or specialty expertise so you can develop those roles and identify new people. I wasn't sure whether they were skill sets and capability that demarcated the 4 different levels, or these were the next people that you're grooming into leadership roles in the business. Could you just talk through what was the identification of the different responsibilities?
What we've been able to create here at SFS is a very good culture. The people we've had with us have been here for a very long time, from 5 to 10 year plus. A lot of them being in the same office with these people for a very long time. You see their personalities, you see their skill sets. How we looked at the structure of the management team was we identified the key characteristics of the person. We didn't have the positions at that time. It was just, let's put all their characteristics down and see where they go. Once you write that up on the board, you actually get a pretty clear picture. This guy is very good with client facing. He's very good at managing. This person here is very good at technical skills. Just being who they are, you could recognize their framework. Utilizing that approach, we've gone, let's do this. Let's see how this works out. And we got it right.
It goes back to things you said earlier, that you're human led. You didn't come up with a solution on a whiteboard that says we need this skill set in this role. You said these are the people in the team. How best do we structure our team of humans to work together? And as you said, it's obviously working really well. Just to go a little bit deeper, when you think back again over the 21, 22 years of SFS's existence, what are the 3 things that you think have contributed most to the years of sustainable success?
Culture. That's probably number one. The directors, even when I was a junior, were always really lovely people. And we always recognize that first. In consultancy, you don't actually have a product. You give a report. That's your IP. That's your consideration. That's your thing that you're preparing. So what is a company who provides a report at the end of the day? It's building friendships, building those kind of core values into each person. I was always wondering how I would become a director, how I would recognize myself as a director, what type of director I would be. Because I lived or experienced those core values that have probably ingrained into me now, I feel like it's just second nature, and that's what I'm trying to instill into others. If we look at the core values, that's one of the key things that have kept the success of the company over 20 plus years. Obviously, the quality of what we do, we look at things as high quality. We recognize in our field what makes a business successful. That's probably the 2 key things I think of.
I agree. A values-driven culture which has respect at the heart of it, is absolutely key. Your answer earlier around the organizational structure enable the delivery of quality work. If everybody has this belief that we're only as good as our last report, and we focus on the next report that we're doing is going to be the best one we've done, then you're guaranteed to maintain that quality. To go a slightly different direction, the main goal of marketing, at least from our perspective, is to clearly express the business's purpose and commitment. and the values. First, it's important to communicate this message to the team, then to its clients, and then finally to potentially new clients. We talk about it being marketing on the inside, by making sure your team understands the value propositions of the business, and then marketing on the outside to clients and their prospects. An effective leader must clearly articulate the vision and direction to the team, and in doing so helps the team understand the business's goals and empowers them to work independently towards achieving them. Again, your structure sounds like it's really facilitating that delivery. How do you ensure your team understands why the business exists and the value it seeks to provide to clients? Can you share any routines or practices you use to consistently keep the vision the forefront of everyone's mind?
It's the quality of the documentation and quality of what we prepare and how we consult with other people. A good example is we have to deal with the relevant fire authorities, and New South Wales has quite a challenging fire authority because their approach is different to other states. They would comment and have recommendations relating to how we document certain elements of what we do. I hear stories where a lot of people might disregard those types of comments. The way we look at it and approach it is there's always two sides to every story. What we tend to do is improve and make sure that we don't get those comments, or we address those comments adequately to improve. Next time when we submit a project and we've got 20 design issues, we only get 2 or 3 negative feedbacks, or not negative in the sense it needs further information. We want to reduce that aspect of it. We try to improve on what we've done previously. And that's probably one of the key values. Our key values are making sure that the product aligns with the times and aligns with the relevance of what it is today. It can't be what it was 5 years ago, because that was suitable then. It's not suitable now. Keeping and shifting and aligning with what's expected today, and always being respectful to other people, because what we find is even if we have a comment that's not ideal, there is opportunities to communicate with these people, with the fire authorities, and ask questions of why certain things were provided and why they have their comments. And if you get an appreciation, you can sometimes resolve that quite quickly and know that the next iteration of your document will be supported, and you move on to the next phase.
I completely understand and agree with that, but it's often a challenge to go from the director's perspective, and making sure that mentality goes down to the most junior employees is very different and very difficult. Like, they'll get some of it through osmosis. What I'm fishing for, are there any activities that you do? And let's just focus on the Sydney team. Are there activities that you do for the Sydney team to really draw that in? I'll give you some examples, not saying you may or may not do these, but if you get feedback that a report isn't great, do you discuss that with the whole team so that people can understand that? If you review a report that's not up to scratch, you just fix it yourself, or do you give feedback so that they can fix it? Do you, with your team, reflect on, is this the best quality we could do every time?
There's internal peer reviews or internal Q&A, but which we do. When a new engineer comes on board, we've implemented an internal training schedule, or we've got a framework of key steps to take to get to a certain point. It's about probably 9 to 12 months they become quite autonomous. In terms of the feedback, in terms of the documentation, using the better documents we have, we've got strategies and templates for a quantitative assessment. We've got it structured nicely, so there's anyone who can read it will understand it. The key thing that we try to do is, irrespective of you understand the mathematics or the engineering principles or the engineering assessments that are done, anyone should be able to pick up our report and understand what we're presenting. What we're presenting should be clear as day to them. We will sit down and talk with the guys before we give them a project. As they get a little more experience, initially we give them the strategy and say, here's how we're approaching this. This is how we want you to do it. As they get a little bit more experience, I'll go, all right, here's a project. Here's the design issues. How would you approach this? We try to get them to think about it and start thinking outside the box.
So it really is delivered through a documented and structured mentoring program. Often it's the fact that a business has created systems and processes that has been one of the most common answers to why a business has been able to succeed over time. Are there any systems or processes that you've created that have significantly impacted the success of the business?
The main one is engineering management team and how we manage resources. We've gotten better with efficiency by creating a management team. We also have weekly full team meetings, and we have daily meetings where everyone tells us what your day is looking at. And from there, you'll start to get a gauge of what each person's doing. What you'll see is there's always going to be people who are overloaded and people who've got a bit of flexibility. Once you see that picture, you can actually get very good at balancing how everyone sits. If we can keep everyone in a certain band that's stress-free, some pressure, but like stress-free, then that works with efficiency as well.
Earlier, you mentioned that one of your top priorities today in the business is managing the key client relationships and building the business. When we think about growth for us and our clients, it can really come from two primary sources. You can either attract a new client into the business, and that opens up a whole new opportunity for work, or you can build better relationships with current clients. And there's often opportunities to go horizontally. Where do you focus your development activities and why?
One of the questions we've been asking ourselves as directors at the moment, everything is tumbling along, but you want new challenges. If you look at how things were done, let's say 5, 10 years ago, it was to grow client relationships. You would take people out for lunch, you would interact, you would do this kind of social coffee catch-ups, things like that. That kind of approach has completely shifted with the new Gen Z coming through. You tend to find that social interaction is probably not as dominant. It comes down to how you're communicating, how you're delivering, and how you're making that person possibly look in terms of, look, I got this consultant. He's doing a fantastic job. Let's get him on to the next one and building those teams. In terms of how we're growing and developing, it's the developing of those products that we're doing. Also, I want to reach out to those, touch base with those people I haven't seen as frequently, and going back to my grassroots community, like social interactions with those people. I still feel like there's a lot of people in my networking that I can reach out to again and touch base because I've been too much in the trenches. It's going to clients who have moved on from the companies I was originally associated with them to other companies and touching base with them and meeting their team, or getting introduced to other people.
I believe we attract people like us who do things like this. Your beliefs, if that alienates somebody, that's good because they're not the type of person you want to work with. Going back to the question, if I summarize it, your approach going back to when you established the office has been building a network of people and using that to grow your network. And it's not that you think about them as current clients or new business. If I've got a good relationship with you, bringing value to the table, both as a person and at work, that's going to help me grow our commercial relationship, but also leverage opportunities for you to refer me into new work. For me, one of the hardest lessons to learn is one that I've had to learn or revisit a few times. Is there a hard lesson that you've had to learn and possibly relearn? And if so, how has that impacted the business?
Yes, when I first moved on Sydney, I was very eager. And I think my eagerness sometimes got the better of me. I would say yes to everything when sometimes the better answer is no. It has impact on workload, impact on the company. I always was under the belief that by saying yes, going gung ho, sinking your teeth into something, that was the best outcome for projects at the company. I'll share a quick story. I got a fee proposal request for a job and I talked to the directors at the time and they said, don't do the job. I didn't heed their advice and I took on the job. It dragged on and dragged on, got to the point where it became something we had to deliver. At the end of the day, it worked out, but it wasn't the type of job we wanted to do. The fact that I was eager, because obviously I'm still trying to grow my network, my new clients, trying to get a name, provide some good quality product. I lost focus of what we were actually trying to achieve. It worked out. The project wasn't a failure. What we did was quite robust, but it could have turned to shit, to be completely honest. To this day, I was just like, I've learned that lesson the hard way. And I got reminded a few times not to do those types of things. As I said, that emotional piece is where I've learned and said, let's take a step back. As an engineer, you wear 10 years liability once your project's finished. If you look back on the projects you've done and think, is there anything that you would be dreading or looking at and waiting for that 10 years to come by, then that project wasn't the best for you, or we shouldn't have done. One of the better things to understand that sometimes a no is the best thing. Until you get strong and confident in yourself that it's okay not to get that job, you will keep on saying yes.
It took me a long time to learn the power of no, and that saying yes to something means saying no to something else. If you say no to something, it empowers you to say yes to the next thing. When we got clear on the type of work we wanted to do and who we wanted to work with, it became so much easier to say, sorry, you're not the right type of client that we can bring value to. Rather than chasing the dollar, we chase the right clients. It's so much more free.
You're happier.
Correct. Everybody's happier. The team's happier.
Yeah.
You do better work. Absolutely. Bill Gates famously said, we overestimate what we can get done in 1 year, but underestimate what we can get done in 10 years. When you look forward over the next few years, where do you see scientific fire services in the next 5 to 10 years? And what are some of the key obstacles you think you'll have to overcome to get there?
I would love to see scientific fire services still being around and still being a big player in high level fire engineering consultancy firm. I'd like to see what we have instilled as part of the culture, the product that we created is still very real. And as I say, the quality is still very much there. I'd like to still see that we've got a lot of the same guys, but also growing and seeing that the thing that kept me at Scientific Fire Services is still very much there. I think that would be great. It'd be interesting to see if there's maybe another iteration or expansion of SFS in different area. We're very good at what we do, and we can expand that and create something good in other areas. I'd love to see that. Looking back proudly, being with the company 30 years, 40, so that would probably be the main thing I'd love to see. If I can instill that same kind of belief and same opportunities for people in the company who join in the future, that would be absolutely fantastic.
Do you see any obstacles, or are there things that you need to start thinking about to ensure something doesn't disrupt you tomorrow? You want SFS bringing the value to the community that you've done for the last 20 odd years. What do you think would stop you doing that in the next 20 years?
What could be the changing pieces, the succession planning? Because we've got directors who won't be around in 20 years' time. There's new directors of the company. Are they going to still have the same values, same approach that the current team has? Is probably one of the key considerations that I really do need to make. I'm the youngest director of four. Over the next 5-10 years, there's probably going to be changes in terms of the next 20 years. There'll be other people in the fold. Do they see things and approach things like we've done for 20 years? Is that still going to be apparent?
It's not uncommon. We work with lots of engineering firms, and we're working with one that's got the founder in his 90s, still comes into the office. The next youngest director is in his late 70s, and they're trying to retire. The other 2 or 3 directors are in their 40s, and they're going, okay, it's time to move on and let the new guard take over. They're really difficult conversations. Are you starting to have these conversations internally, and how are you navigating that?
We have directors meetings quite regularly. We've had discussions like that. Timeframes and things like that is probably the next element of what we have to discuss. In terms of moving on, the old guard and the new guard coming in, I think the old guard moving on is probably easier. Introduction of new guard is, I don't know, it's been like this for so long. Change is daunting. It can be quite interesting.
Thank you for that. It goes back to all the principles we started talking about at the beginning of the conversation. I have no doubt if you approach those conversations in the same way you've explained the whole business around the principles of sustainable relationships, self-reflection, and an open and honest communications with an underlying principle to bring quality to the table, then the conversations with the leadership coming up and going out will be done maturely, respectfully, and humour to humour. Dario, thank you again for your time today. It was a really enlightening conversation. I look forward to exploring SFS success in the future and understanding more about where you're going and how you get there. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.